You know, for a format that has barely changed, a lot of people say, what could be the most fun thing about overdress? And I think I'll tell you. It's a turtle. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Eugene Dbt04 here, and Merry Christmas to those that are still celebrating it, or, you know, if you believe in Jesus' birthday, but, you know, whatever. Merry Christmas. So, for those who don't know, my previous deck profile was Phantom Blaster Dragon, and today we are moving back to my very own staple, which is, of course, Eugene, the Narukami representative of Overdress for now. Eugene as a deck has sincerely never changed. From set 3, I mean, set 3 we received a lot of good things in my opinion, but right now we barely got anything. I say we scraped the barrel, but the set 3 core, as well as what Eugene has come true, has really helped us to still stay somewhat viable. Of course, don't expect to beat Pure Light, don't expect that. But I would say Eugene is still in a pretty decent spot as of this point. I definitely would not nominate him for, you know, one of the lower tier decks. I would say he's still pretty okay. So today we're actually going to be covering the set 4 stuff as well as stuff that has a left hand deck, which is important because a lot of people are not going to understand or get how Eugene is actually supposed to transition. Now, two things we actually need to keep in mind before I start this video is that there are going to be a lot of things you're going to see and you're going to be wondering, how is this here, or why is this here? And you're also going to be wondering, where has that gone? You know, I thought last set this was good, I thought 2 sets ago this was good. No, they are leaving, and believe it or not, when Eugene gets his cross right, even more things will leave because, you know, they're all name locked. So we have to start getting used to our more generic options at this point in time, but at the same time, we're not going out of our way to actively sabotage ourselves. With the added bonus that, you know, we need to play around Pure Light because, yes, this is our Pure Light format. So in this deck, I actually aim to use as little counterblast as possible. I've actually tried to, you know, account for more counterblast usage and play counter charges with stuff like, you know, I tried out that guy. This is Desert Gunner Ethan. He's not bad, but he's not that good. And of course, I tried everyone's favorite generic counter charger, which is Gojo. So I did try, but at the end of the day, because of the way our Dragon Empire counter charges that are not Trick Moon and Urger have been built, you know, the generic counter charges are really suboptimal in my opinion and will not last through this format. So instead of actually putting myself through pain, I decided, you know, I would just play without counterblast because very honestly, we have a large enough pool to do without the counterblast. So that is why in this list you will not see much counterblast options. Unlike last set, we are using all our counterblast to fight Pure Light. And honestly, even if we don't fight Pure Light, no, that's fine. We still can operate with or without CB if the opponent chooses to CB deny. Because yes, some people actually do try that. So alright, now that I've gotten all the premises out of the way, I know it's a lot longer than normal, we can finally go through this deck, which is quite simple because I've done this 4 times now. So alright deck, we have Upgrade 0, which is Desert Gunner Bart. Upgrade 1 is Desert Gunner Nigel. Upgrade 2 is Desert Gunner Randall. Upgrade 3 is Desert Gunner Eugene. So Bart is obviously our starter, not much to say here. We are having Upgrade 1, this is Desert Gunner Nigel. Nigel has, of course, 2 skills. When rode upon by Randall, you can soul charge 1. Which is cool, and I'm starting to think that I may have actually forgotten to use this skill last match. Never mind, its second skill is that when your opponent's rear guard is retired, you can counterblast 1 and retire himself to retire something else. Now, long-staying Eugene fans, if such a thing exists, will know that Nigel has been a very important important card in the deck's history, but it's just not viable anymore. The CB just to snipe 1 for 1 trade is sincerely suboptimal, which is sad, but it's just the way it is. And if you think about it, it's actually kind of a good thing that we are moving away from having to play so much of the right deck core, that we can actually try new options. But I just want to bring it out that it used to be good, but it's just straight up not good anymore. But if you want to talk about people that's improved over time, that's a kind of Randall. Randall, when rode upon by Eugene, you may actually move a card from your drop zone into your soul and you draw a card. Pretty cool. 3+1. Who wouldn't like that? Second skill is V or R. When he attacks, you counterblast 1, soul charge 1, and he gains 5,000 power. You definitely don't want to play this as a rear guard. It's complete trash. You're paying 1 CB to soul charge and gain 5. Which we will get into that because we actually got another version of that, who is Travis Scott. But really above and beyond all of that, you can now use this as a Vanguard skill. In the past, I think I've said this more than enough times, I've advocated that you don't want to use this. But now we've reached a situation where you can. And I know what you'll be saying. Hey, wait, you just said don't use your counterblast, right? So why are you using this? You can afford to pay 1 CB. You really can. And if you are really scared of the product matchup, you can just choose not to use this skill. If not, more often than not, I would say this is actually a really good card in my opinion to still use. And of course, our big boy is Desert Gunner King, Eugene. Eugene, of course, has his 2 iconic skills. Both are once per turn. First skill, rest 2 rear guards, snipe 1. Simple as that. Simple, and he gains 10. Really good. Second skill is you Soul Blast 5. If an opponent's rear guard is being tied this turn, you look at the number of cards on top deck equal to the number of open circles your opponent has, call as many as you wish, Soul Charge the rest. Like I said, this is Eugene's second hand, this is his safety net, this is where I'm building board. It hasn't changed, and it's still pretty cool in my opinion. Of course, the number one issue is, of course, when you talk about Pure Light, you want to talk about your soul usage, which in my opinion, I would say comes down to more of clever usage. You can play this in a normal matchup in terms of how you normally play Eugene, your soul for power, with stuff like Jibra, with stuff like Dustin, and then you also want to use your soul for board. But at the same time, if you're aware of the Pure Light matchup, you should definitely use your soul more conservatively because 1, Pure Light can imprison your soul. 2, you want to release the prison stuff with soul. So you do need to actively be aware of what you have because you don't want to reach a stage where, oh, I use all my soul to get my prisoners out and now I straight up can't even beat Pure Light in the face because I've run a soul. I can't pay cost for anything. So really, I would say this is more of just being aware. I mean, we have had 4 sets of preparation playing with the same boss, so I really think that if you're still here at this point in time, you definitely would have a rough idea of what you're doing. If not, it's time to learn. Moving on to our grade 3s, we play 4 copies of Eugene, 1 in the right deck. And of course, we play 4 copies of Tribash. So for Eugene, I think it's as simple as that. We just want it for the persona, right? And of course, we play our Tribash. Tribash is of course a very iconic card from set 1 who has somehow still managed to stay for a whopping 4 sets. Incredible. Its skill is when your Vanguard attacks, if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards, you may move this card to the soul, your Vanguard gets a crit. Yeah, it's a -1, but it moves in the soul, so it evades, it's a cool evasion card. It helps in the prison matchup. But beyond that, it's just been that good. Eugene's kill pressure does come from Tribash, and I think that's a well-known fact. You have magic numbers, but you need a crit. This guy gives you free crits. There's really no argument to straight up cut Tribash. I mean, people want to play it at 3, I can understand why, but to me, it's not that you shouldn't play it at 3 or 4. You should straight up just play as many as you can, because it's just that good of a card. Please do not consider cutting Tribash until we actually get better crit options. Moving on to our grade 2s, we play 1 copy of Randor for the right deck. We also play 4 copies of our returning champion. Yes, he's still here. Dustin. Yes, he is still here. We play 4 copies of our set 2 champion, Gibrasaurus, which is cool to still see him around. I'm gonna be sad when he leaves because he's name locked. Yeah, now that I think about it, I'm gonna be really sad when Eugene gets his evolution. But you know what? We don't have to be all sad. There is a card that has returned to cut through the future, to completely destroy the Eugene naysayers who said, no, this deck was crap. Set 1, people laughed at it, but this man stepped on the stage to destroy the naysayers. It is Hungersaurus. Yep, I know everyone watching at home is like, what? Yes, because this is a bad card and it's bad in the deck. We're gonna explain slowly everything so that we don't just trip over and perform mitosis. We're gonna actually discuss this through to make sure everyone is aware of why we are making these options, as well as later on discuss why these have precedence over the stuff that's been removed. So please bear with me. I know right now I seem very irritating. Randor is for the right deck. I don't have to talk much about him. I really don't. Then of course we have our 4 copies of Gibrasaurus. Gibrasaurus has 2 skills. You've seen him for a while now. If your Vanguard is Eugene, you may Soul Blast 1 and rest this unit. Choose one of your opponent's great. You may choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So it's simple as that, just a spot removal 1. It's a rest, so it kind of works like the same way the rest of the Eugene stuff works. Alright, fair enough. And then of course we have the second skill, which is that during your battle phase, if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, you can stand, and he gets 5. So it kind of worked like the set 1 stuff, where you had stuff like Onishifuki, as well as, of course, Hungersaurus. So that's really just how that kind of operated. But it came with a built-in snipe, so that was just really good in set 2, where Eugene barely had much. But it has come to a point where you still want to play him at this point in time, because we don't have that many options, and it's not that we can't play him, we can, so we should play him. And I just think it's really good. You can even utilize this with Eugene's retire skill. You can rest your Gibrasaurus for that skill, and he'll still stand back up. Really cool. And we have someone else who is now joining the arsenal of restanders during the Eugene skill. So we are going to get into that very soon. Don't worry. Speaking of familiar faces, but not so familiar, this is our 4 copies of Dustin. Dustin has 2 skills. When placed on a rear circle, you may move 1 card from your hand into the soul, draw a card, and retire 1. Okay, that is cool. It's a free removal. I like it. I think it's really good. But it's on place cycle 1, which kind of brings you closer to deck out, but really that's not a concern. But it's just free, so well done. Second skill is the one where it's pretty good, and it's a lot like Mubidi. When he attacks, if your Vanguard is the Grade 3 Eugene, you may Soul Blast 1. This unit gains 2000 power for each open rearguard circle. So he can go all the way up to a free +10 for Soul Blast, which to me is just, hey, that's wonderful, in my opinion. So far, for the past 2 sets, Eugene had, just 15k beaters. Set 3, he got a 20k beater. And he's still really good, and he's definitely worth playing in the deck. I mean, I don't know whether the cross rights for Eugene will be allowing him to keep his name, but I'm going to be frank, I hope to see this guy next set, because I think he's just really cool. And even if he doesn't appear next set, it's been an absolute honor playing with him for the past half a year. Next up is, of course, our returning champion, Hungersaurus. Yes, let me explain. So, for those of you who were not very sharp, or at least for those of you who just don't really know the Eugene deck from set 3, one of the cards we actually removed was this, is our capture party. So this is actually the slot that went to that. So I'm going to discuss why it removed later. But what does Hungersaurus do? Hungersaurus is a very simplistic skill, which is that it gains 5000 power, and, yes, and, if your opponent has a front or rear guard, this unit has to attack it. Which, to a lot of people, that's really bad. And I totally understand that. There is just a lot of things that can go wrong with this skill, so people are just, naturally wary of it. There's also a lot of things that will really disrupt your own plays, because while this is a 15k body, yes, you do have the issue of, if there is a front or rear guard, you are forced to attack it, which means you straight up just lose one of your attacks, which is really bad, yes. But we need to consider what was the other option, which was Onishifuki. Onishifuki's skill is that if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards, this unit gains 5000 power. So you actually need to make sure your opponent has lesser rear guards, and then you get your 5k. Hungersaurus is built in with the 5k. He just needs to swing into an opponent's front or rear guard if there is any. Which honestly is fine, because if you think about it, you just need to retire 2 rear guards for Hungersaurus in order for him to connect to the center column. Whereas for Onishifuki, you do actually need to sack 3 instead. And if it's any constellation, if there's a facade on the front row, your Hungersaurus can actually help to pursue and hunt down the war crimes criminal. But if you're playing Onishifuki, it's just a 10k jumping into a 13k, it's not going to work. So overall, that's really the reason why, I mean, I've said this before in my Eugene set 1 deck profile with Hungersaurus, that's really the reason why I prefer Hungersaurus over Onishifuki. But why is he here? Because Hungersaurus is an absolute beast when it comes to early aggression. He's going to help you beat 15ks for absolutely free. And that's just great, because even Gibrasaurus is a 1 or less rear guards, then he actually gains his 5k power. So if you think about it, Gibrasaurus is like the hardest 15k to get, Onishifuki is the second hardest, and the easiest is obviously going to be Hungersaurus, which is why he's here. He's not at a 4th, because very honestly, there are a lot of cases where you actually don't want him. But I would say he's viable enough to still warrant a 3-off, which is a healthy number to see him participate in your board battles. Our grade 1 lineup is really very easy. We play 1 copy of Nigel for your right deck. We play 4 copies of our stronger, enhanced, very expensive PGs. We play 4 copies of an old friend, Orlando, and we play 4 copies of a brand new MVP, Gatesford. Let's break it down. This is from the right deck. I don't have to say much. We play 4 PG because this is overdressed. If you wish to live, you have to buy it. Orlando, I've already discussed before, so I will skip through him really quickly. He has 2 skills. When your Vanguard attacks, move him from the regular circle to the soul, your Vanguard gains 5. So it's essentially like Tri-Bash, but he's a grade 1. Okay, cool. Second skill is from the soul. You may counterblast 1 when your opponent's Vanguard is retired. You can superior call him out from the soul. Wow, that's really good, and that's really what you want. You know, it's something that's in the soul that can actually play a part, which, very frankly, I was hoping Eugene would get that, especially because the right deck has ways to tutor cards to the soul, and then at the same time, we also got stuff like Dustin, which straight up moves cards from your hand to the soul. So it was kind of about time we got something that had an effect in the soul, and Orlando is the card we got. As I said in my set 3 deck profile, you know, Orlando is not the greatest, but for his versatility, I would say it's worth it. I know that a lot of people are not fans of Orlando because he doesn't help him retire. He's kind of a minus, you know, he doesn't really do much. But Orlando is also another reason why I try to play with as little CB as possible. Because if you're not fighting a pure light matchup, you can use all your CB on Orlando, and that's actually a really great way to use it because you can now use your counterblast for more beat down numbers as well as board participation if you're not fighting pure light. So I think that's just one way we could do it. So 4 copies because you want to use as many of them as possible in my opinion. You don't have to use like all 4 throughout the game. You can straight up just throw away or guard off 1 or 2 of your Orlandos or maybe go damage. That's really fine, but I think 1 to 2 copies in circulation on your board by turn 3 to turn 5 is certainly what you're aiming for. And last but not least is our brand new Gatesford. You may not have heard of this card. In fact, I guarantee you half of this audience has not. I have. So Gatesford is one of the last few cards revealed for the Dragon Empire during the pack openings in Japan, which is why I have him, which is why I have so many of him. So his skill is very simple. When your opponent's rearguard is retired, you stand this unit, he gets 2k. But it has to be on a back row circle. That's fine. That's fine. It's wonderful. So he straight up just takes off the minus from Eugene into a plus. He becomes a 10k. So it's basically a Veloster Hazard on drugs because Veloster Hazard has to boost. But if you res Veloster Hazard, you straight up can't even use him at all. You straight up can res Gatesford. He still gets his skill, which is wonderful. There's just so many things I can say about him. You want to play him in DO as well. If you want to, I think that's really fine because he could boost an overboard. And he stands as a 10k booster for absolutely free. But that's really not what we're here for, and to be honest, if you don't want to play Gatesford in Overlord, I really think that's fine. Gatesford is really meant to be with Eugene, because that's what he's designed to do. Phenomenal card in my opinion. You know, it's just really good. It's free. You know, if you rest stuff like Orlando, the only way you get their value off or Tri-Bash, you know, is you straight up just move into the soul, which is a minus. But Gatesford is not a minus. He breaks even and goes even further beyond with a magic number boost. There's nothing I can really say about it, you know. For a deck that really got very little, I would say this card just does so much. And it's a generic, so we can see this around in our next set of Eugene when he gets his cross run. Last but not least is our grade zeros. I know this video's been going on for very long, please bear with me. We play 1 copy of Bart, it's our starter, 1 copy of John Feather. If you're interested in winning, please play John Feather, but if you have no money, you can play the other one. We play obviously for heals. I'm playing the dinosaur hero because, you know, I like touchy cards. I think it's cool. We play 8 crits because we do want to crit out and destroy our opponent. I'm playing the R crits because it's very important. Speaking of cards that are very expensive but not very important, is my draw triggers. Now you do want the extra shield, yes. You do want to draw Eugene, yes. But you certainly don't need to play 4. You can just play 3 because it's really just to run out the slots where you need the draw, but at the same time, you're not really willing to go full offensive with a front. So I think draw is really fine. You definitely want 8 crits because it's just worth it in terms of your actual aggression, and the R crits do actually synergize with Eugene to a certain extent. And before we end this video, I need to talk about the cards that didn't make this list or have been removed. So this part is honestly skippable if you're not very interested in learning about the progression of Eugene. But if you are not interested, just skip the conclusions. I timestamp everything. So of course, Capture Party did not make it to this list. Travis Scott did not make it on this list, and Idris did not make it on this list. I think this is the one that shocks most people. You know, you're gonna be like, what? But this was like so good in Eugene's set 3. Sadly, we are not able to use this anymore for a couple of reasons. Like I said, the pure light meta is certainly the biggest reason. Straight up, we're gonna be honest with you. You know, how do we put it nicely? If you're hoping to use this on turn 3 and start shooting off your opponents and drawing a lot, you won't. And if you're thinking, oh, using on turn 4, well, there probably is not a turn 4. And the fact that you have to straight up use this as a minus and retire to get your pluses back, oh no, that's not happening in this meta. Not anymore. It may have worked on the plebs on set 3 because, you know, no one knew what Eugene does. But, you know, in set 4, people are more aware. They call less. And they want to keep their stuff for more later turns, you know. Very, very rarely will you see someone straight up commit boards on turn 2 or turn 3 nowadays. I mean, turn 3 is still fine, but turn 2, turn 1, you're not going to see that anymore. So in terms of actually getting this card to straight up work on your turn 3, is practically impossible at this point in time. In the same case, you know, if you want to keep this hoping to survive to later turns, it's a straight up vanilla. So in all cases, you're just tunnel vigiling yourself in terms of what you can actually do. You might as well play more cards to beat your opponent in the face, or straight up just give you utility rather than something that you don't even know will proc off or not. I mean, Bruce players can straight up just not call anything for 4 turns and then beat you in the face, and there's nothing you can do about that. So really, I was really upset when I had to cut this card from my deck because I really enjoyed this, but to be honest, it's just not that viable, and cutting it has given me more shield space as well as more utility. So I'm just happy to be able to keep the card around, and hopefully it's okay next set. We play, well, at least we don't play Travis Scott. This is the double rare that Eugene actually got, but very honestly, if you're playing him, then you're okay unless you fight Pure Light. His skill is actually really good, to be honest. If your opponent's rear guards retire this turn, you counterblast 1, soul charge 1 plus 10,000 power to him. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. That's wonderful for a counterblast. Not only do you gain 10, you sack 1, and you soul charge. So it really helps all around. So why are we not playing it? Because like I said before, we need our counterblast to fight Pure Light. And I know you may be thinking, come on, you're exaggerating. Surely we can fit this in. No, I'm not exaggerating. You really cannot fit this in. Because even if you're not fighting that matchup for, you know, against Pure Light, this card also has a number 1 problem, which is that if you do not have any rear guards to retire, you straight up just can't use this. And like I said with the bots problem, people don't really commit to bots anymore. Bots are like a 2006 concept. They're really not going to do much. So you're really hoping that they call 2 or more units, then you can snipe it off for the early game. And if you don't, then you should have just wait for this effect, because you need to retire something else first, then you get the skill off. So you have to time that. Plus, we already have superior options when it comes to retire, which is obviously stuff like, you know, your Gigasaurus, you know, stuff like your Dustin is still very alive and well in this deck. So it's more of an excessive issue if we choose to play this. Maybe, given next set, we could actually see this guy come in, which would be cool in my opinion. But at the way this game is developing, I just don't think he has a home here, at least not yet. Lastly, Idris. I've been really on and off the fence when it comes to Idris ever since his debut, and frankly, this is the part where the fence breaks. Idris has a very simple skill, a very useful skill is that if your opponent's rear guard is retired this turn, you may counterblast 1 and choose 1 effect. 1, he gains 10k. 2, you know, you move this into the soul, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or lesser rear guards and retire it. So it was like an improved version of Nigel back in the day, which is why I really enjoyed playing this card. And you know, if you had excessive CB, you can just counterblast 4, you give this guy 40k and pew, slap the opponent in the face. But nowadays, it's just not worth it anymore. It's not even viable. And like I said, if you really want to talk about counterblast spam, Orlando now exists in this deck to really serve that purpose. So Idris, it's been fun, but it's time to go. And that finally wraps it up for my Eugene set 4 deck profile. Considering that there have been so little cards added to his deck, you would have really expected me to not be able to talk this long, or at least even longer than PBD, but I somehow have. But yeah, that really is set for Eugene. Is this deck viable in the pure light meta? I really hope so. I don't know. I would say Eugene, like I said, is definitely not the worst deck in format anymore. I really hope that from set 3 and set 4, now we can really understand that it's really not that bad anymore. It really is playable. But in terms of actually seeing high levels of competitive play or even any forms of, actual great results, I really don't know at this point in time. I think it's way too early to tell. And like I said, the pure light meta and a lot of people are not very versed in playing Eugene, so there's just a lot of factors that just pulls into the inability for this deck to really take off. That being said though, if you have invested in Eugene for the past 3 sets, I have good news for you. In set 4, it just gets better. I think in set 1, I've got a record to say that, the deck can only get better. And I'm glad I'm right, because really, I've not seen a set where I'm like hard disappointed in Eugene. There's always like 1 to 2 cards that really just remind me that, hey, there's still hope for the Naru card. But like I said, what do I know? Thank you all so much for watching. Leave your request in the comment section below and we'll cover it for Dbt04, hopefully, if I have it. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe and a good Merry Christmas.